dedicated ones. Before we begin, we need to share a few words from our gold event sponsors, Therma-Tru Doors and MADAV Collective, and we have a silver sponsor, the University of Toledo.
At Therma-Tru, we're not just building entryways that perform for a lifetime. We're making people feel at home. From the production floor to the front door and every step in between. Because we're all working together to make home better through security, performance, and style. Bringing innovation to life that makes an impact beyond our walls. Meeting the needs of families and welcoming new members to ours. Standing behind every component of our complete door system, engineered to perform for a lifetime. Helping our partners build trust so they can build stronger businesses. Providing security people can count on in timeless designs that fit their personality. Being a part of houses that families are proud to call home. Confident that they made the right choice for the long run. The moments behind every door are always at the front of our mind. We strive to make the places where we live, where we play, and where we work always feel like home.
MADAV Collective provides professional branding, advertising, and design services for small nonprofit organizations. Our residency program pairs aspiring creatives with expert mentors from the MADAV Group family of agencies. Creatives get paid for their work and build a foundation for a successful career in Toledo. Mentors donate their time to develop the next generation of talent. And our nonprofit clients get agency-level marketing services that don't break the budget.
Let's say you're someone like Anthony. Smart, hardworking, up for a challenge. You check out big old anonymous state university. And you feel, well, like a number. Then you do a 180. You visit the tiny technical school in your neighborhood. But now you start thinking they may not have the majors, research, technology, and experiences that you're sort of expecting. And then you check out Toledo. You meet a professor, and she tells you about the clinical experience you'll get right here at the University of Toledo.
Let's say you're someone like Hannah, bright, resourceful, ready to go. You check out fill-in-the-blank state university, and you feel, well, a little lost. Then you reverse course. You visit that small college your uncle went to, but now you're stuck in neutral wondering if maybe they don't have the majors, internships, research, facilities, and activities that you're sort of expecting. And then you check out Toledo. You meet an advisor, and he tells you about the experience and mentorship you'll find right here at the University of Toledo.
Just to remind you, you have the opportunity to sign up for interviews with both MADAV and Therma-Tru Doors on Saturday, tomorrow, or Monday or Tuesday of next week. Check your email, ask for instructions on how to sign up for those interviews, and we'll post the links in the chat box. And lastly, we want to thank our other silver sponsor, LaPlante Real Estate, and our bronze sponsor, Owens Community College. LPRE is a full-service real estate brokerage and property management company providing a full spectrum of housing services to our clients, whether they are looking for residential brokerage services like buying or selling a home, investing in Northwest Ohio's rental properties, or seeking to rent a home in Toledo. find us on Facebook at LaPlante Real Estate or www.laplanterealestate.com. Thank you, sponsors, once again for your gracious support of the event. Now that we've taken care of business, we can start our guided discussion. Just a reminder to put your mics on mute so that everybody can hear the panelists and all the questions that we're putting forth. And don't forget to put questions in the chat box. We'll be answering those at the end of the session. It'll be about 15 minutes for that. So I wanted to introduce my panelists. Well, first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Kathy Jex. I'll be the moderator for the session. I'm a freelance business owner and a past president of AAF Toledo. We are recording the session and posting it on our website, aaftoledo.org, so you can have access to all the content after the fact as well. To start, let's introduce our panelists. Melanie Dunn is the owner of Cuttlefish Graphics. She's a feisty boutique designer focused on helping brands show their personality. She graduated from Owens Community College Art Technology program and has since expanded her capabilities by working as a designer in agency, corporate, and freelance environments. Melanie is also past president of AAF Toledo and continues with nonprofit organizations in the area. Kyle Rhine is a passionate brand marketer who started working in retail sales management for Scott's Miracle-Gro, servicing accounts like Home Depot and Lowe's. From there, he moved to marketing as an account executive at Interrupt, which is a strategic branding and marketing agency located here in Sylvania. After a few years, he transitioned to the client side and then helped manage the advertising and PR efforts for the brand team at Therma-Tru Doors in Maumee. In 2019, he went back to Interrupt. This time, he's the senior account executive working with Fortune 500 companies in the building materials industry. Valerie Thompson is an environmental graphic designer at ProMedica, which is, if you didn't know, is a national health and wellness organization. She is the owner of Leap Graphics Design Firm and teaches graphic design as an adjunct instructor at Owens Community College. Valerie is a native Toledoan and an alumni of the University of Toledo. And Ann Romero has been in the marketing arena for nearly 20 years, specializing in national shows and events for Fortune 500 companies within the building materials sector and the trucking industry. She also managed many major projects, including national ad and public relations campaigns. Currently, she's an account executive for Creative Solutions Group in Maumee, where she manages all aspects of about 30 to 40 trade shows, events, and grand openings. God bless you for that one. She holds a master's and bachelor's degree from the University of Findlay. Thank you again for being here. Now we can start on our questions. I promise this is probably the best discussion you'll hear through the whole thing. These are a lot of professionals with a lot of years behind them, and we know the ropes. So I myself started in an agency, moved to the client side, and then became a freelancer where I've been for many, many years. You know, with the pandemic, a lot of people have experienced working from home for the first time, and it's something that us freelancers know everything about. It not news to us. It was like, well, welcome to our world. But it gives you an idea that freelancing isn't for everybody. So, you know, what do you do? And then there's the other idea of the agency. There's tremendous agency work. And then there's the corporate side, as you've been learning all during the sessions. So who wants to start about what's the biggest differences in working for an agency versus a company? Valerie, you want to start with that?
Well, Kathy, I don't know if I should be one of the answers. I've never worked for the agency.
Well, Mel, how about you? You start, because you've been in an agency and you've been all around.
I started at a print shop and then went to an agency and then went to corporate and freelance kind of the whole time, and sometimes was doing full-time freelance, just to give some perspective. But I think the biggest difference for me between the two would be with an agency, the agency I was at, most of our clients were in the jewelry industry. So you'll have these niches in the agency. So even though you were in that niche, there was a lot of variation between the different clients, and you had the ability to have more freedom with your design style. Corporate, there's a lot of restrictions. The bigger the company is, the more strict your brand guidelines are going to be. But I found that as a fun challenge to, it's fun to be like, oh, well, you're limited to just that. You have to still be creative, but you have to put the title up here and you can only use these colors. And so it was a fun challenge to navigate that, but they are two very different environments, I found. And I found that the agency, it felt like they led with ideas a lot. If you're a person that likes to be impulsive and kind of jump in. And then on the corporate side, it was a lot more procedure based. You do your design and you have to send it to the legal department, and then the whoever reviews the product that you have the flyer about, and everyone has to sign off on it. So the corporate was a lot more process led, and agency for me was a lot more idea led, which sounds like an obvious win for the agency, but it did lead to a lot of, last minute work and late hours and things when you have that more impulsive environment.
Yeah, Kyle, I think you could add something to this.
Yeah, I want to echo a lot of what Melanie was saying. I mean, the way that I guess I think about corporate versus agency life, corporate is, I think, generally a lot slower pace of a workday. It's much more, typically, it depends on what company you're at. And I was at Therma-Tru, and I think they were a great company to work for. But you're 9 to 5, you can kind of leave work and go home and maybe not think about work so much. They often offer better healthcare options, better retirement plans, more structure. You're really more of a specialist at a corporation, so you're going to be focusing in on like a particular acumen, like advertising or PR or something like that. Whereas in an agency, you're going to be more of a generalist, so you're going to hit a lot of different kinds of projects. I think in a corporation, you're spending a lot of time, routing things for approvals and kind of managing up the chain, trying to get higher ups on board with sort of the direction you're going in with your creative. So I think if you're somebody who is maybe a little bit more of an introvert, or you like a little bit slower pace of life, a corporate life would be good for you. As far as the agency goes, so I went from corporate to agency, back to corporate, back to agency in my career. And it's the way I describe it, it's like controlled chaos in an agency. So things are moving very quickly. You're managing lots of different projects. There's lots of timelines. It can be stressful. You have to be able to manage stress very well. And if you're not able to manage stress very well, it's probably not going to be a great environment to work in for you. The great thing about an agency, because it sounds a little scary at first, but the great thing about it is it's very challenging and it's very rewarding. So you're working with lots of different types of clients, lots of different types of projects. Like one day I'm talking with a creative team, and then the next day I could be talking to a CEO of a Fortune 500 company in a meeting. So you get a lot of different kind of exposure to the organization.
Yeah, that kind of echoes my experience too. And having been on both sides. And I'm glad you brought up like benefits. Corporations are probably your best bet with good benefit packages. And you're right, it's more of a 9 to 5 job. It's also a good way to get your feet wet in the business world and to find out where you really are wanting to go. You guys, Joanne, Valerie, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I kind of jump back and forth between agency and corporate as well. I found that from the agency side, at least from a lot of the clients that I dealt with, I did a lot of more project-based work. So I was kind of like marketing gap that they had to get things done. I was on the account management side, not in design or writing or anything like that. But on the company side, it was more around the strategy and how does all of this fit within that strategy. It can be a little chaotic on both ends, but I think Kyle is very correct on the agency side. A lot of times things are a controlled chaos, because you're getting things at the last minute from your client, because for whatever reason they're turning things into you, whether it's late or right on time, which then starts to push your timeline out. So you got to really do a lot of crunch time to get things done. But I prefer the client side. I liked more of the strategy and dealing with that portion of it, and really getting into the product and the supply chain and all that stuff that comes along with it. Where on the agency side, for me, I was just kind of scratching the surface of the brand and the product. It just depends how you, which way you'd like to go.
I'd like to expand on that too, because I agree wholeheartedly with you, Joanne. And I think that that was one of the good things, the benefit that I found for working for a corporation, is that you can dive a little bit deeper. You have a history with the company. You're working there for years, so you see the brand develop, you see the new initiatives that come out, you see how that fits with or compares with the old way of doing things. So there's room to kind of like grow with the company. In addition to that, you can also learn about different departments of the company. So with an agency, you know, you're a client for like this temporary period of time, but when you're working as an in-house designer or creative with a company, you can kind of learn a little bit about strategy. Maybe we learn about real estate now, or I'm learning about senior care. I'm learning about the different parts of the organization, advocacy, and those other things. And I'm learning how my design skills can then help those departments. Or we've had designers move from our team to those departments. They found something else that they felt passionately about, and they were able to kind of shift around within the organization. That gives you some, that gives you a ground to be able to explore other professions and occupations, still remaining at the same company. So I think that's a good benefit as well.
Yeah, definitely. So what about freelancers? What do you think the biggest factors to consider for students that are thinking about becoming a freelancer?
I'd like to answer this one.
I know Valerie. I'm like, Valerie, be good at that one.
This is what I do. Okay, so the top two things I think, first is evaluating your worth as an artist, because you're gonna have to charge for that worth. You're gonna have to determine what that is, and then you're gonna have to charge for it to sustain yourself. I'm answering this, I guess, based off of maybe freelancing and that's all you're doing, or maybe it is a big part of your income. So that's the angle I'm coming from. Pricing is always a big challenge for new freelancers, because you don't want to price yourself out of the market, but then you don't want to be, too inexpensive. And so you're going to have to find a sweet spot in there in paying your dues, but yet making sure that you do get paid what you actually need to sustain yourself. That's going to come from trial and error. I don't care what anyone says. You're going to adjust those prices eventually to find out what supports you and what the market supports. But then the other thing too is how you're going to get new clients. That has to be up there. When I freelanced in Columbus, I moved to Columbus in 2007 and freelanced for 4 years, and that was my only source of income. And if I could go back to that girl now, I would tell her to get off the couch and get out there and meet people, because that's that was my number one problem. I was sitting there with all the skills, all the software, knew my prices, all of that, didn't have no customers. What is it for if you don't have any new business coming in? So I think that a lot of times new designers who are freelancing think that once I hang the grand opening sign, I'm going to have a line out the door. You will not. No one knows you. So you're going to have to figure out how to get your name out there and how to get a referral system or a consistent way of getting new business. Being comfortable with talking about yourself and talking about what you do and introducing yourself to people is going to be imperative. So I would say that if those are challenges for you, start with your inner circle and start to tell them about what you're doing, and get your elevator pitch together, get your plan, your research done for where networking is happening in your city or around the country now that we're all virtual. You have a steady flow of clients, because once this big project that took all of the time is over with, what next? You're going to need to find the next stream of income.
Mel, you wanna?
Yeah, I guess, definitely from like a logistical standpoint, and the first thing I always say, because my head does default to, if you're doing this full time, if these students want to jump out and do freelance right out of school, you got to think about health insurance. We've talked about how the corporations definitely are where that's probably your best bet if you're looking for great health insurance. Otherwise, you have to look into some options yourself. I am able to get on my spouse's insurance. So that's one way. And also your taxes, because your first year of freelancing, you get that nice surprise. That you actually owe the government a portion of what you made. So go ahead and save that, like just account that into your pricing and lock it down. So logistically, that's what I think are the biggest factors that people don't think about. But other than that, it's just your work style. Are you comfortable? Are you flexible enough to integrate with other people's systems? I've done on-site freelancing before I had my son. I would go to places and you have to work sometimes on their computers. Sometimes, you like Dropbox, but they like Google Drive, and you need to be very flexible to integrate into other people's structures if you're going to be freelancing. And you need to be able to be a self-starter and manage your own schedule. When you work somewhere, they're going to tell you what the projects are. They're going to be dealing with the clients. But if you're on your own, you do need to do all that. And that is, I like it. It's not for everybody, but you do need to think about these things. It's not just, oh, I'm going to have my flexible schedule and do things whenever I want. It's a business, and you have to figure out if you're able to make that happen. But there's a lot of people doing side hustles and side gigs right now too. So it's not like you have to think about all these. If you wanted to do it on the side, there are a lot more places that are getting comfortable with you freelancing and working somewhere. So you could dip your toes in and start seeing if you like dealing with the clients, and if you're okay with lining up your own projects and hitting your own deadlines. So I don't think you have to just dive right into it. If you're thinking about it, you there's a lot of ways to dabble in it right now to see if you like it.
Yeah, Kyle, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think, as I was looking at this question, and I think, father now, I think look at this question differently than I would have, 10 years ago, maybe. But the first thing was, can you afford to come out of school and work with an inconsistent income? Because it's going to take you, probably several years to build up your business, build up your contacts, and be able to have a reliable stream of work coming in before that happens. So can you pay for health insurance? Or do you have access to that? Like I said, another thing I think you have to do is assess what your strengths and your weaknesses are. Because if you're somebody who just loves to get into a design program and design, well, when you're a freelancer, you have to run your own business. There's lots of other things you have to do outside of that design focus. So you have to be doing your sales, basically. You have to do your books. You got to keep up with all that kind of business management type of thing. So you really need to understand where you're strong and where you're not strong. And then when you're able to, you can outsource the things that you're not strong at. So something to think about there. The other thing is the power of focus. You need to really focus in on, okay, there's several questions you have to ask yourself. What service am I offering? What industry am I targeting for that service? Who are the main types of people that I need to be getting in front of to sell my services to? What does my service area look like? What is going to separate me from all the other providers out there? Why would this company choose me over somebody else? How am I going to market myself? So there's lots of questions you have to focus in on, and the more focused you can be, the more successful you'll be. Because if you don't have any of those questions answered, you're going to be trying things everywhere until something sticks, and it's going to take a while for it to stick. So, and then I think really quickly, the last thing is, are you somebody who is easily distracted, or we call it squirreled here? So you get squirreled by things. Somebody who is easily distracted, it's going to be very tough to maintain that power of focus and stay kind of on path with your business. If you see shiny objects everywhere and you're kind of chasing the hottest thing. So, you got to really gut through it. You got to stick through it and do that. So.
Yeah, you got to remember too that, you're not when you freelance, there's no paid vacations or no paid holidays. If you're not working, you're not earning money. And money doesn't come in every 2 weeks like it does when you have a job somewhere else. So,
Yeah.
Gwen?
Yeah, I mean, I won't reiterate what everybody else has said because I totally agree around the inconsistencies of your income. That was always a struggle for my husband because he really likes things very black and white when it comes to, our budgets and things like that. So, just kind of working with him of, it's not going to be that same amount every week, when you're in like corporate or agent, like a true agency life, you're getting that. For me, I really had to balance work life at the time when I did it. My children were very young. And because you're working out of your home, sometimes that work-life balance gets thrown out the window and you're just trying to keep up with your home life and your children, then keeping up with the work that you do as well. And I felt like it just kept blending together and I literally had no time for myself. So I really had to kind of sit back and really rethink things. I moved my office from upstairs to the basement so that I couldn't see it in my home because it was all the way downstairs so that I could remove myself from it. Because I found when I could see it, sitting, it was in like our family room area. I felt like it was calling my name to constantly be working. So I had to separate that and really sit down and focus. And like Kyle said, really be disciplined with your time and focus with your time. Because if not, before you know it, you're working way more hours than you need to and way more hours than you're getting paid for. So you got to be careful with that.
Yeah. So I'm going to skip around a little bit and bring this up because Melanie kind of touched on it. What do you think the do's and don'ts are about having a side hustle if you're working for a company?
I can jump in if it wants to, but for me, when I did the side hustles, one thing you got to be really careful of, if you have a full-time job that you're getting paid to do, you really need to make sure that your side hustle doesn't accidentally find its way into your current job. That's your main income. I found when I did that, it could easily do that. Oh, well, I'm just going to do this for 10 minutes. And then before you know it, 45 minutes later, you're still working on your side hustle work when you're really at your, I don't want to say real job, but your real job. So you really got to be careful when it comes to that it doesn't start blending. You really got to make sure that you're keeping them very separate.
I know people have been fired for that exact thing too,
exactly.
that got caught doing it.
Right. And you because in your mind, you're thinking I'm working all day. I'm giving my company for my real job 100%, when really you're probably giving 80% because 20% either you're thinking or you're doing your side hustle work and you don't even realize it sometimes because you think, oh, well, it's only 10 minutes, but really you did it for an hour and a half. Whether it was you were thinking and distracted doing that. So that would be my only comment. I didn't do a lot of side hustle or a lot of freelance work. I called mine consulting because I'm not like a designer or anything like that. But that would be my only statement there, is just be really careful with your time and be focused on what you're doing in the job that you're doing at the time, so it doesn't blend.
Yeah, I think you have to be very realistic with yourself in whatever your side hustle is. You have to be realistic that, okay, for me to be successful at my side hustle and my job, when do I work on my side hustle? Like, what are the hours that my customers there are going to expect me to be working and doing things? And if you can't answer that question up front, it's probably not going to work out, because you're either going to blend it into your day job, like Joanne said, or you're going to come home from your day job, you're going to be tired, and you're going to have, your customers from your side hustle to respond to. And if you have a, family or kids or whatever, that's going to get very tough because you're going to run out of time really quick. So, and time is money. So you just have to be really realistic with yourself up front.
I would add to that.
I can add something. I think, you go ahead.
No, go Mel.
I just want to say, I definitely agree with both of them that you need to be mindful of when you're planning that out. I think another factor is being really honest and open. Tell your clients you work a day job so that they know if they're emailing you at noon and you work till 5, they're not going to get a response. You kind of condition them to you only responding in the evening or on the weekends or whenever you're working with them, and then be open with the company as well. When I started out, and it was maybe, similar for you guys on the panel. When I started out, it was like a big no-no. I worked at a print shop at the time, and I started my LLC, and I thought it'd be cool. I didn't even think but they got mad. They like hit me in the back and wouldn't let me deal with, I didn't get fired, but I couldn't deal like directly with customers anymore. But moving forward, as long as I was honest, the agency had a policy against it. And they told me that in the interview. And I said, well, I want to do this. What can we do? And we worked out a non-compete. And since then, I've recommended, a non-compete, because they get worried you're going to take their clients. I've never, ever done that. I would never attempt to do that. But they get worried you're going to sidestep them if you have the side business. So I think as long as you're setting realistic expectations for everybody and being open about what is going on, I think that sets you up to not get caught doing something you're not supposed to be doing.
That is 100% what I was going to say.
Look at that.
Yeah, and ethics, that's part of it. You've got to remember, you never, ever, ever share information about campaigns or work you do with anybody else. That is confidential, and it'll get you in a lot of trouble if you do, and you'll never have clients again. It's just unethical and not done. You don't steal other people's work. So
when I've freelanced for a lot of the places I worked for after I mean, pretty much all, if I think back, all the places I worked for, I have freelanced for since. And so you do want to keep those relationships. You don't want to go around burning bridges.
Yeah.
And they'll tell people too. They'll tell each other that you did that. So yeah, just be very honest and set realistic expectations for yourself, like Kyle and Joanne said, in terms of keeping them separate.
Mm-hmm. And you'd be surprised how people respond. They will be accepting of that. The people that aren't, you don't want to work with them, or that maybe that's just not the right fit. But most people will say, okay, I understand, or you have to remember, especially as a freelancer, you have the power to set things the way that you want them set. Whoever you want to work with, whatever time you want to work on it, whatever it is, if that's your setup, be honest with it, stand by it. The people who will comply, they'll probably go on to be good clients, and the people that won't, they'll move on. Don't put yourself in a compromised position.
Keep in mind, you're going to have, as I was saying, good and bad clients. Some clients you're going to want to work with and stick with. They're great people. And some clients are just stinkers. They're hard to get paid. They don't want to pay you. They don't want to pay you what you're worth. It's really not worth your time and effort to deal with some clients. And when you're first starting out, it's tempting to take any job because it's work. But not every piece is going to be a portfolio piece, and not every business is worth working with. You'll eventually figure out which ones are the right ones.
I did want to add one last thing, just because I have navigated this a lot. A way that I've done too, or a rule I have with myself, is I have my Melanie Dunn portfolio on page, and I have my Cuttlefish page. And I don't put things on Cuttlefish if I was employed at another place, because I feel like that's misleading. I keep that separate. If I worked there, I put it on, Melanie Dunn. And then if I was hired as Cuttlefish, I put it on Cuttlefish. So I think just being clear with that as well, so that if they see it, they don't think, well, wait a minute, you were with us when you did that. So
it's a good way to make the distinction. Definitely. So what advice can you provide to the students for helping them determine the right path?
I can jump in. For me, like I said, I've worked on both sides. I've been on the client side more than I've been on the agency side. So when I really sat back and thought about this question to say, if I were me, 20 years ago, or maybe 5, however old you think I am, but I really think starting off on the agency, I wish I would have started on the agency side. And the reason I say that is because on the agency side, you get to learn about so many different companies because you're really touching quite a few companies. You're dealing with a lot of different personalities and processes, and you really start to figure out what you like and what you don't like. And you can do that easily in an agency, where on the client side, you're dealing with their brand, with the people that are in their marketing department, and it's a little bit different. And to add to that, I think in the agency side, you start to learn the pricing and really understanding, the pricing side and how project work is done. And then I also think you really learn you learn the good and the bad of how a project is passed off to an agency. Because a lot of times, unless you're on the agency side, you don't understand how much the agency a lot of times fills in those gaps that you didn't give them, whether that's by asking the question or doing research or things like that. Because there's been so many times we've been handed projects and they said, oh, we're going to give you this creative brief, when in all actuality, it wasn't very helpful with what it was they really wanted, or what they wanted it to say, or who they wanted to say it to. And we usually had to fill in all of those blanks and kind of spit it back out to them to say, is this really what you want? Because I read it, I filled in some gaps and had to kind of represent it back to them. I think that will help you when you move to the client side, if that's the side that you think you want to land on, that now you're a little bit better at handing off projects to agencies and really giving them all the information that they need to be successful, because you get what you put into it. And I've had so many clients that just really kind of punted the baby over the fence for me to kind of pick up their lack of attention to detail on a creative brief. So that's why I think I wish I would have started in the agency side. I think I would have eventually ended back up in the client side. That's where I like to be, but I think I would have learned a lot more had I started agency first.
Definitely. I think starting at an agency does help. I didn't plan it that way, but seeing the way, I incorporate a lot with that now. In the print shop also, just the way jobs come in and how you organize them and how you communicate. So that's the short answer. On the long answer, though, I think, and I read this book, it's Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and Imani Lateef referenced it in his panel. And I knew I was going to reference it in this one. So I'm like, great minds. And I sent it to Valerie, but it's about starting with your why and figuring out why you do something. Why are you attracted to marketing? Why are you attracted to design? Is it because you like to communicate with people? Is it because you like to make people laugh? And, I wish I would have read the book 10 years ago, because once you find, I don't know if it existed 10 years ago, I don't know how old it is, but if you find that why, it makes it a lot easier to evaluate these things. So if your why fits better with, you'll be able to identify, if you can identify that, you'll be able to identify better if a company is a good fit for you, if a field is a good fit for you. These things we're talking about, freelance, corporate, or agency, if those are a good fit for you, if you figure out why you're doing this, because you can see if your why aligns with these people you're getting into the relationships with. Clients also,
Yeah.
I would say that, first of all, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I would say that sometimes things come to you. You didn't go after it, but it happened that way. Like for me, I wanted to get a job. I wanted to work for an agency. No one would hire me. So I started freelancing, so it worked out that way, that was my path. And I don't regret any single moment of it. Then I went from freelancing to working for a corporation. That kind of is backwards a little bit as far as, in comparison with a lot of other stories. But I was playing the cards I was dealt. And sometimes you have to do that as an artist to just kind of start somewhere. If you want to work for a corporation, if you always thought that was it, if it doesn't work out that way, roll with that. That means that right now, maybe something else is a different fit. Try something else. I will also say too, that I don't know any designer, I don't know any graphic designer or any creative really that doesn't freelance in some way, shape, or form. Even if you work for a company, you know, your cousin's gonna have a graduation or somebody's gonna have a baby and want an invitation or you're gonna end up doing something for somebody on the side. I mean, it just is what it is, unless you just have this strict no policy against that. But 9 times out of 10, someone's gonna want something from you. That's kind of how I got started freelancing. I didn't set out to be a company. I was just helping people. You know, I was just doing programs at church, or, you know, you need an ad to go in the newspaper, or, you know, someone asked me for a favor for something, and that turned into more asks from people. And then that turned into the business. So I kind of, by process of elimination, or maybe just working from the circumstances, developed Leap Graphics. It's not always going to be this aha moment where I automatically now know what my future is. And I know what jobs I'm going to have. And, you know, you kind of, and as a creative person, I think that it's important to be flexible, and it's important to be not so hard on yourself. You know, if things don't go the way you planned, that's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to get into a job and hate it and then leave and do the next thing. It's okay to move around. It's okay to figure it out, especially at your young age. It's okay to try different things, because I think that, you know, I did customer service for 6 years while no one would hire me to do artwork. And every single one of those years gained me experience that I'm using as a freelancer or using at work, because all of those skills dealing with people and, you know, having to deal with irate people and deal with billing and deal with, you know, these other things in customer service, that all played a role in me being the professional that I am today. So don't negate what you have to do while you're trying to figure it out, because all those other jobs and all those other opportunities flow into your story and your experience. And that's going to be useful at some point in your art, in the art world, in your art career, even if it didn't have anything to do with art while you were learning it.
Yeah, I would. Trying different things is what I would do. I mean, like if you would have asked me when I was coming out of college at Ohio State, you know, hey, what are you going to do in 10 years? I didn't even know what I wanted to do in college, let alone coming out of college. And so I ended up starting in sales, and I was in sales with Scott's Miracle-Gro for 7 years, and I learned a lot in sales. And the great thing about sales, especially when you're thinking about like a marketing career, is a lot of times marketers are doing things or developing things for sales teams out in the field. And if you have that sales background or that customer service background, that experience, when you're on the marketing side and you're doing things, you can say, hey, wait a minute, you know, this doesn't, like when I was in the field, I don't think I'd be able to use it this way. We might want to tweak this way or whatever. Everything you do, whenever you are getting experience, you're learning things, right? And when you're making mistakes, you're always learning things. So, you know, I make mistakes weekly and I learn weekly. Like, yeah, we all make mistakes, right? So I would say don't be afraid to try different things. Trust your gut. And I think it's okay to say no. I mean, if there's an opportunity that comes along that, you know, your gut's saying like, I don't know about this, or this doesn't feel quite right, you're always going to make more money saying no, because there's always going to be another opportunity if you're out looking for it. So don't be afraid to say no.
Oh, good advice. It's interesting when you're trying to figure out exactly what you do. And like Valerie says, sometimes it's just things lead to something else. I mean, I didn't start out to be a freelancer either, but I was in a corporate environment, and the whole environment changed, was reorganized, positions were eliminated, and suddenly I don't have a job. And I really didn't know what to do, and because I had been in the business for so many years and knew so many people. Then people started calling me and asking me to do projects. So that was really the start of freelance for me. We don't have too much time left. Does any of the students have any questions that they want anyone specifically to ask? We could go on and talk about the most challenging factor in trying to get a job in the industry and how you overcome that. I don't know. My first job, I think it was, I was doing pay stub for a film company that was in the basement of someone's house in the Old West End. It's an actual film company in which we don't have a lot of film companies around anymore. But it's like one thing leads to another, and I started as a designer, and now I'm a copywriter. So learning everything to me is a good thing to do. And as you're working in the business, things change, the business changes. I mean, maybe you're a designer and suddenly you go, you know, web design is really interesting, or this specific design just for a specific thing, or writing blog things is really fun, or you're going to start to find little niches. What do you guys think about getting your foot in the door, getting that first job?
I'll start that one. This is going to sound like a total plug, but my biggest challenge was getting into the industry, because they want you to have experience, but you can't have experience if you don't have experience. It's so frustrating. I do think there's more opportunity now with the way the digital landscape has exploded, for people to maybe just start putting their work out there. Like, that's what you guys should be doing, just putting it out there. But what I found useful was joining, it was called the Ad Club. Now we're AAF Toledo. And I did do free work, but it was on committees with people that were working in the industry, you know, with these people I never would have worked with, that probably wouldn't have, no offense, Kathy, giving me the time of day at the time, but I was able to work with them and see how they interact with each other, see what their dialogue is, see what they're expecting. They were able to see how I, you know, fulfilled deadlines. And then I had pieces, you know, my first piece that I was excited about was in the city paper, and that was for our Fight Night event for Ad Club. And yeah, that was free work, but I was able to then go into an interview with it. So it's really hard to get client work when you don't have clients, but if you can find those opportunities where you can donate, don't give it all away, but if you can donate and get some nice portfolio pieces out of it and make some networking connections, that goes a super far.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that. 100% yes. When I moved to Columbus, I didn't have any customers. I was depressed. I was crying, and the rent was due. So I had to figure out what to do next. And that's what I did. I went on Volunteer Match, and I found, and you can segment out by the type of work you want to do. They have a graphic design category. You will find a lot of requests for that. That gave me not only my first kind of job in Columbus that I was proud of, but, you know, there are national companies on there. I was doing stuff for the, you know, National MS Society, and a lot of the bigger nonprofits nationally use free work, you know, freelancers to volunteer their time. So you can get some big names in your portfolio. You know, that's a good way to do it. The job that I got in Columbus was designing the first, you know how they do, they have the newspapers at the homeless community cells, and they were just starting to create that in Columbus. So I got to design this paper from scratch, you know, for this company. Whereas if I were to apply at the Dispatch, you know, I'd be getting people's coffee all day. You know what I'm saying? So it gives you kind of a chance to do something big, maybe at a beginner level, or just kind of at a early starting point, but it gives you access to bigger projects when you volunteer your time. I would also say that kind of sort of what Mel was saying, you know, knowing people, that's the commodity today, you know, your network. Before, when I was applying for jobs, I was caught up in the Career Builder and the Monster and all these other things and getting your resume out there. That is not how people get hired. Don't let anybody tell you that. That is like for, you know, entry-level clerical positions. You know, if you want to get a design job somewhere, start talking to people. Start introducing yourself to people. Start joining associations, like Mel said. Ad Club is a good one. There are a lot of other ones. And then when you join that association, get involved. You know, attend events, talk to people. It's easier said than done.
Volunteer for committees.
Yeah,
and
it's
projects.
Easier than done if you're not naturally that kind of person to just go up to a stranger and say, "Hi, my name is. This is what I do." I would suggest finding ways to get comfortable with that, because it requires it. It really does, especially if you're starting off in freelancing. You got to get over that hump of being shy and modest, You can be humble and still go up to people and introduce yourself and just be kind. Most of the time, people like to talk about themselves. So if you can say, this is who I am, what do you do? You know, how do you like that job? You know, can I shadow you? Can I visit you? Can we have lunch? Can we talk? LinkedIn is giving a lot of students big opportunities for internships and hire, because they're going directly and finding who the decision makers are and then approaching them directly. I tell a lot of my students that a really, really good way to kind of get in the door is to make it not about hire me. Maybe it's just let me get to know you, you know, stroke their ego a little bit. Artists love that. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, you know, oh, I've been following your work. Oh, I'm such a big fan. Can I interview you? Can I talk to you? Can I do a virtual Zoom lunch with you? Can I pick your brain? Can I shadow you? Can I tour the office? Can I, you know, just, you know, would you mind reviewing my resume? I'm not asking for a job. I'm not applying. I just want to know who you are. And people are impressed with that. When you take initiative like that, people are impressed that you took the time to step out. A lot of corporations, especially, are looking for entrepreneurial minded people to work for them. It's weird to kind of think about it like that, but they're looking for people to take initiative. So if you make your own path and you make your own connections, that shows something. You know, you're interviewing technically before you even get the interview. You know, you're showing them something different about you that makes you competitive in the market without having an official interview. And just like business deals are done on the golf course, you know, hires are done a lot of time outside of work, outside of, you know, a formal interview process.
Especially in the creative world.
Especially. And it's a very close-knit community too. That's another thing too, like with the ad club, you know, everybody from the art, you know, community shows up to that, you know, a lot of the professional art community, you know, so they see each other all the time. They know each other all the time. And now that I'm a member of the ad club, I'm able to see that some of these relationships have gone on for years and years of people I never knew, you know, so if I was more involved back then, you know, I'd be able to have those same stories. So.
Yeah, and to add to that, Valerie, you talked, I think, the last question about you have to play the cards that you're dealt. You know, so when you get out of school, it's really just about getting a job a lot of times because you have bills to pay. And I know a lot of people at Owens Corning, you know, I wanted to go to Owens Corning to be in marketing, but I didn't really have the experience. But they would hire me to go in, believe it or not, I was in the IT department as a purchase administrator. And, you know, IT people are not creative people. And usually they get annoyed by us creative people. But it was my foot in the door, and that was the cards that I was dealt at the time. And I really needed a job, but I really stayed focused on what it is I wanted to do. So I took that job at Owens Corning. I did really, really well at it. Nobody talked to me because IT people don't really talk to people. But I started to get on like the community relations team at Owens Corning. They had like, you know, annual golf outings for suppliers and things like that. And I volunteered my time, or Habitat for Humanity. And I volunteered on those days so that I could really meet more people within Owens Corning, and that you can network once you're there. And so I did that, and I did end up in the marketing department. It took me a year, which isn't a long time. I may not have landed the job I really, really wanted in the beginning, but I eventually got there. I stayed focused and I networked internally, you know, doing different, you know, volunteer stuff just to be able to meet more people. Because that was the cards that I was dealt. And, you know, I made a good hand out of it, you know, to keep going on your pun, I guess. But
yeah.
I really think what it comes down to is being persistent. When I was working for Scott's and I first interviewed with Erupt, it was like in 2012, and you know, I interviewed, I went in a couple of times, and I didn't have the typical marketing background for an agency, so I think the owner of Interrupt was a little skeptical, like, hey, this guy's a sales guy, like, is this the right kind of guy? But I just bugged the shit out of him. I followed up with Bill for 2 years, and finally, you know, an opportunity became available, and he was like, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on this guy. And he brought me in, and marketing ended up being a really good fit for me because I have a creative side and a kind of business side as well. So I'd say just be persistent. Like Joanne was just saying, it took her a year to get kind of where she wanted to go when I was 20. And I also saw that Cameron asked a question in the chat about taking business courses in college in addition to graphic design or visual arts courses. So this is a good idea. I would say if you're looking to do freelance and kind of run your own business, absolutely. The more exposure you can get to business principles, accounting, marketing, even business strategy. When we're doing marketing, whether it's PR or graphic design, advertising, we're doing that for a reason, right? And it's always to drive business results for an organization. So the more that you can understand why you're doing, start with why, like Melanie was saying. If you can understand why you're doing what you're doing and how it applies to the business and how it is going to make that business successful, the better you understand that, the better you're going to perform and create. So, absolutely.
I would also say too, kind of piggybacking on what you said, Kyle, make the determination of where you're headed. What are your interests lie? Is it more on the business side or is it more on the design side of things? Because I think that whether or not you choose to do that depends on your answer to that question. And I think that like for example, at ProMedica, we got a lot of business people. We're a little team of 4 or 5 people who are there designing for the entire system. And it helps that some of the, marketing reps have some design knowledge, just so it's easier for them to communicate with us really what they're looking for. It makes that collaboration a little bit better. But if you're taking a visual design program, you probably need every single one of those classes. Like that focus probably should be there if you want to be a designer. And then if you want to work for yourself, learn that online. There are a lot of free options for that. You don't have to take college courses for that. I mean, you can learn a lot of business strategy and a lot of some of the administrative tasks through other means other than a college course. The college course might take you big picture level, corporation level, as opposed to entrepreneurial program. Although like UT, for example, has an entrepreneurial program you can go through that's not a whole course, that's not a whole degree. So that might assist you if you wanted to be a freelancer. But if you want to be more on the account side of things, marketing might be a better major or way to go rather than the visual part. And then maybe you supplement the creative part with some things that you can find online to familiarize yourself with graphic design terms and things like that. So I would say whatever your focus is or whatever you think that you're leaning more toward, whatever your affinity is for, go to college for that. Learn the other part, supplement that with other free ways because the bills keeps rising, you know what I'm saying? You keep taking classes in college when there are a lot of opportunities to learn some of that stuff outside of that realm and then even more specialized to what you want it to be. You might really want to be an artist, start taking business classes, and they're not talking about you running your own company. They're talking about something else.
That's great advice. Great advice.
You have to continue your education that way too, because even if you do go to school for that, I mean, the project management systems now are light years away from the project management systems 10 years ago. So you do need to keep up after school, and those free options are great for that to make sure you're staying up to date and staying relevant.
Absolutely.
So excellent advice.
Well, we hit 4:30. So I guess this is officially the end of it. You all made it, you survived. I think this was a great discussion. I hope you all enjoyed it. Again, this was all recorded, so you can go back and revisit. And if you have any questions for any of the people, feel free to reach out. You can find us through Ad Club. I'm an old Ad Club person too. It's AAF Toledo. So thanks again, everybody, for coming to CareerCon. And good luck with your careers. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.